Oh, we don't need no fancy words. I mean, we need to practice. We need to rehearse.
I'll tell you what we need. We need some paying gigs. We don't need this messing around, first one patio and then another, and that's ridiculous.
Amen.
We don't got no goddamn band. We don't need to fucking practice with
Are you ready to start this thing?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead and introduce me.
Okay, welcome to the GD Band Podcast. Oh my God, we're on iTunes.
Yeah, we're on iTunes. We're on something called Stitcher.
Stitcher. I think that's the podcast app of choice.
Oh, it's awesome.
Do you know about it?
I did after you told me I'm on Stitcher.
Oh.
And now I have the
I
Stitcher app, and I think it's amazing because I am one of those guys I hunt down podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of why I started this, and or we started this. Sorry.
Yep.
And wow, I didn't know it was all there in one spot on one app, like This American Life, even the big ones, all the
Yeah.
you just go grab them.
And also how surprisingly easy.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought you had to be like big time, that you had to have a manager or something.
I think
and people had to be operating behind the scenes, you know?
Oh, we are big time. We're on iTunes and Stitcher now.
That's
so, right. Yeah, we're in my kitchen.
Yep.
There's
So
just
all
two of
you
us.
non-Stitcher people can suck it.
Can suck it. We're phase one.
Right.
Complete.
So, yeah, welcome to the No GD Band Podcast. I am Henry.
I am Chris. Are we doing last names, or because we're nationwide now? Should we stay anonymous, or?
Well, it's probably connected to our identity. You'll find out who we are.
You will definitely. So we started. So we had a little bit of a pre-podcast argument, which I just want to carry right over here before we go into housekeeping items from last show.
All right.
So Henry is of the opinion that I want to overproduce the podcast.
Right. And I want authenticity, you know?
God. So
That's what I want.
So if Henry decides to go take a dump in the middle of the podcast, he wants me to either A,
right.
commentate, or B, leave the bathroom door open so you can hear the
So amplify and amplify. What is it when you try to take what somebody says?
It's
and you
authenticity,
amplify
dude.
it to,
See, I think this whole thing with Henry springs, and this is what I was going to tell him. I think this whole thing springs from his love of amateur porn versus regular porn.
right.
Okay.
Well, who doesn't? Who doesn't like amateur porn better than regular porn?
I don't think I do.
Really? You don't want to see the stretch marks and all of that?
I mean, okay, when you find the 1 out of 20
Oh,
amateur
God.
porn videos that is well done, it's amazing.
Oh,
but
God,
otherwise,
I'm
it's
talking
just
about
terrible.
porn. Chris.
Yeah, you are. And so last episode, for those of you that don't know, where this all really came about was Henry, right in the middle of the podcast, just decided to go to the refrigerator, which we are in my kitchen, right near the microphone, and get some ice, and like my headphones went insanely nuts, and it was very loud, and I edited that out so that you folks wouldn't have to hear that. Henry thought that lacked authenticity.
It gives context. Context and flavor.
All right, so we're going to move on to housekeeping items. You know what? In the housekeeping items, I'm going to ask for a lot of feedback from our listeners. So I feel like it's pretty cocky already to feel like I've got a listening base, but I'm going to
All
plow
17
through.
of you.
Well, you know what? I set a goal on SoundCloud of 35 plays, downloads, whatever you call them. And as of this morning, I saw 37. So we met my goal, so I'm just going to keep on rolling. We even got feedback from a couple people. And that's what I wanted to start with.
Okay.
I owe one of our, I got to call it avid listeners because he listened to one whole podcast.
All one of them.
By the name of Mike. I'm not going to say his last name. I owe him an apology. I misread his comment. I thought he was busting on our intro music, which is his right.
Right.
He
had every right. He had every right to do that. I kind of wished he had just
because we asked for it. We said,
Right.
if you want to criticize us, go for it. But he didn't. I just had trouble with reading comprehension.
He wanted to talk about emotional rescue and as his
which was great
about
because
the
I don't.
Rolling Stone thing we talked about last time.
Yeah, and I don't want to rehash the last time, but I wish I had brought that up. I wish I had done a little more research on the Rolling Stones because I love emotional rescue. And I disagree with Mike in that I think Emotional Rescue actually proves the point. The Rolling Stones were still trying to grow. They were trying a different style of music. And actually, even though I don't like disco too much, kind of closet-like disco a little bit, but I think that's the best disco there is the Rolling Stones version of it. Where I think the Rolling Stones went bad was when they went back to just saying, we are blues guys doing the blues for the rest of our lives, which is what Steel Wheels sounded like to me and what all their current output sounds like, which they've already done better earlier in their career.
Right.
And there was a quote, Henry, I didn't bring up that I read in an article researching for last month, where the guy said, you know what the whole problem with the late career versus early career thing is with all bands?
What?
Is that bands that are great fall in love with a particular thing or style, perfect it, but they never fall out of love with it.
Right.
And so the later they do it and more, you're like, you've already done this great. I don't want to hear you keep doing it.
Right. And then now at some point we're going to have to talk about Morrissey.
That's going to be, we're going to save that for current events at the
Okay.
end. And I thought about this too, Henry. We may need to set a rule. If a topic or a person comes up 2 podcasts in a row, they cannot be talked about on the next podcast.
Okay.
So we will talk about Morrissey at the end of this one, and then we are done with Morrissey for at least one episode.
Are we going to introduce the whiskey now?
Oh yeah. Well, no, I still got more housekeeping. This is a power-packed episode, so we got to
All
move,
right.
move. So all of you fans out there, all you folks, fans, people who listened, thank you. We thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much.
It's so awesome. I mean, mostly it's friends and family right now, but we're hoping to get bigger than that.
We're shooting for the stars, baby.
Yeah, so at least then we don't think it's just an ego trip while we're just talking and thinking all of our friends and family are listening.
Right.
However, the first feedback I got, and Henry, I don't know if you did this as well, but when we got it done before we posted it, I played it for my wife, and I think she gave me some really great feedback. This I don't want to anger her, so this is not the only feedback she gave me, but this was the first thing out of her mouth. And I want to preface this by saying I think this speaks more to marriage of 17 years than it does to good critical analysis.
Uh-huh.
She listened to the whole thing, didn't say a word. As soon as it ended, this was the first thing out of her mouth. You, meaning me, talk too much. Now remember, it's a podcast where 2 people talk. There's only 2 of us, and my wife's first gut reaction was, I talk too much.
Yeah, all right, so I'm on the back patio. We just got this thing done, and I was really high on like having one that we could play. We had the outdoor speaker going, the fire, and I started pumping it through the speaker, and we listened to it. She's like, "That sounds really professional," and all that. And I said, "Do you think I talked enough on that?" She said, "No, you talked just the right amount."
So the feedback we both got, and when you texted me, I texted you what Megan said, and then you texted me back that Jessica said the exact same thing about you.
Uh-huh.
Megan almost had to pull the car over laughing. So she said maybe we're not objective as far as that
But
goes.
that's just the way it goes, man.
That's just the way it goes.
You know?
Okay, so let's move on to the next housekeeping item. I've
Okay.
apologized to Mike. I've embarrassed Megan and Jessica. What else is there? Oh, your homework. So, Henry, did you do your homework
No.
from last week?
No,
you
I
didn't.
have not.
No, you didn't.
Okay, the
No, you didn't.
homework was for me to watch The Black Coat's Daughter.
In its entirety.
Yeah, and I have a whole reason why.
Okay.
Okay?
The dog ate it?
No. Well, here's the story. I went to, you know that I have a class. I take American Lit too.
So Henry's going to try to blame this on having real
So-
schoolwork, but
so
here we
I
go.
had real schoolwork to do, and to be honest, I read some pretty heavy shit. I read W.B. Du Bois. I read Booker T. Washington.
So you're going to try to blame this on black people?
No, I read James Baldwin.
Another black person.
Right. I read Ralph Ellison.
Another black person.
Some heavy, depressing.
Oh, so black
You know.
people are depressing.
Oh God, the work was challenging for me. Right.
So
To
it's
get there.
challenging reading black people right.
No, that's not what I mean. You suck.
Now you're really going to hope that I edit. See?
But the truth is, I had a lot of work to
Okay,
do.
well, we're going to save that.
And-
We're just going to move on. We're going to save. Henry didn't do his homework.
No, but let me tell you, I have another.
This podcast
here's
is
another
not
reason
important
why.
to him, even though we're on iTunes and Stitcher. It doesn't matter.
On Sunday, I go outside and I have to mow the grass. Okay, Jessica mows the front yard. mows half of the backyard, and I have to get up and finish it. So I do. I get
We're
out
gonna have to
there,
go into
I
that on
start
another
pushing.
pod. Why does
No,
she only
I
mow
start
3/4 of the
I
yard?
start pushing the lawnmower, and I smell something funny. Guess what it is?
It's your copy of the Black Coat's Daughter
It's
burning.
a dead cat. There's a dead cat in my backyard. It had been there for about, it had to be 2 or 3 days. There were maggots. There,
Okay, so
it stank to high heaven.
So
and I had
first
to
you
bury
tried
it
to
in the
blame
backyard.
this on black people, and now you're going to blame it on a dead cat.
Can we go to the whiskey segment now?
Not yet. We got one more item.
All right.
So this podcast, although I think the two of us talking is extremely interesting, I think we could go on for hundreds of episodes with this. We are going to attempt in the future to bring in some people and interview them.
Right.
Is that not?
Yeah, yeah.
And we did come up with a list together, and there's kind of we kind of got a, correct me if I'm wrong, we kind of got a 2-list kind of thing going. We've got like the big names, like people that don't know us or are not completely local. And by the way, for you iTunes and Stitcher people, we are located in Charlotte, North Carolina, the heart of Dixie. And a local list of people that we think are interesting that we...
Right.
And now here is what I came up with, this fun idea. It's again, maybe biting off a little bit more than we can chew here on episode 2, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. Now, the 3 names that I'm going to throw out there, what I thought was, instead of me calling these people or texting them or Facebooking them, I do know these people, okay? So I don't want you out there in podcast land to think I don't know them. I could do that. But I thought it might be more fun if we had listeners who heard their names on the podcast contact those people and go, dude, these guys have started a podcast. They mentioned you in the last episode. They want to interview you.
Right.
And then have them call us. How cool would that be?
Right.
And I'd be like, what?
Yeah, I heard you call me out on your podcast, man.
I did? No, man.
I heard you
but
say-
I mean, I would love to interview you. But
I heard you said something about me. What'd you say about me?
wow, you've got a big ego thinking that I call it.
What'd you say? What'd you say about me?
It'd be great. That would be great, right? That would
Somebody
be way
said
more
that
fun.
somebody else said.
And then we could attribute to our fan base, our loyal fan base, and be like, you guys got the job done.
Right.
You helped us out. You were the man. So anyway, the 3 names that we came up with right off the bat were Mr. Tyler Baum.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Bruce Hazel.
Bruce Hazel. Yep.
And then Miss Carla Marsh Southern.
Right. So if you guys get wind of this, you're not going to hear from me.
Not going to hear from me.
And come and get back to us.
Get back to us, and we will interview you. We want to do, and you'll be, and whichever one of you gets back first, you're going to be the first interview on the podcast.
And we're everywhere. No GD Band.
I mean,
Twitter.
we are everywhere.
We are No GD Band at Facebook. We are No GD Band on Instagram.
I mean, this shit is growing daily.
And you know who we are.
There you go.
Find
All right,
us.
let's get some whiskey going.
Sounds great.
The effects the whiskey may be having on my body.
Okay, so what whiskey do we have
All right.
tonight?
This is going to be Knob Creek whiskey.
Knob Creek, nice.
This is the high-end stuff, man.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's really made. It's 100 proof. How much is it?
You know, I used to live right next to a road when I grew up in Tennessee called Knob Creek, and that's where all the that was like the it wasn't the good side of the tracks.
Really?
So when I first saw Knob Creek Kentucky bourbon, I always thought it was like, oh, that's got to be some low end garbage, but no, it's not. It's good stuff, right?
Guess who puts it out?
The same people that do Jack Daniels.
Jim Beam.
Jim Beam. So it's like Jim Beam's Cadillac brand.
It's aged longer. It's
Nice.
aged 9 years.
Wow.
So that's tonight's podcast is brought to you by Knob Creek.
Yeah, go ahead and pour some.
We make it at the Knob or something.
Maybe you want to call them with that one.
Grab your knob.
The effects the whiskey may be having on my body.
All right, we're back. That was a good.
All right.
That was a good. That was a good whiskey.
Yeah, they'll be calling
segment.
me. They'll be calling me. I mean, the advertisers are going to line it.
I thought your game went way up from example A to example B. Like if that level improvement continued, you would have an actual slogan by the end of the hour that would work.
Right. If I don't
Grab
have
your
to
knob
keep,
was so much better than
then what I did to come to the knob.
meet me at the knob or something. I don't know. It sounds
I
scary.
need to take
So,
another. I'll just start. I should have worked in advertising. Hey, I've got it, and then wave your hand.
Would you
Grab your knob.
Would you have waved your hand at your first option? Because you could have got fired for meet me at the knob. Okay, so the topic today is not music. We are not a music podcast specifically. We're not anything podcast specifically, except whatever the fuck me and Henry want to talk about.
Right.
I was out of town last weekend, and on my way back into town, and Henry, I hope you can post a picture of this because you're good at that.
Yeah, send me the thing and I'll put it up.
Up at the end of Highway 16, so if you take Highway 16 out of Charlotte all the way to where it dead ends, way up in some little town called Newton, there's nothing except a Dale Earnhardt Chevrolet dealership, which I thought was apropos because you take a right on whatever that next road is, and right there, carved out of the woods, is what I've come to learn, I'm not exaggerating, is an 85-foot tall flagpole with a 20-foot by 30-foot Confederate flag flying on it.
How did you figure out how big it was?
I found an article in the Hickory, I don't know what the Hickory newspaper is called, but I found it online on the Hickory website, Hickory newspaper website.
Like a sight to see or something?
Well, no, they just did an article about who put it up and why they put it up and what it's all about. And it's one of those Sons of the Confederacy, heritage not hate guys, but
Oh yeah.
who looks like he's done a reenactment or two in his day.
Mm-hmm.
So the interesting thing to me was I was being followed up 16. I didn't notice this except because I just passed a gigantic Confederate flag by a car that had two black people in the car, and I thought, gosh, how intimidating would that be? Like if I had just driven by a flag that said, "I hate Chris and Henry's podcast."
Right.
20. Somebody felt so strongly about it that they put a 20 by 30-foot flag up on the side of the road, so when I drove by, I would know where they stood on that. I kind of feel like that's how black people feel about the Confederate flag.
Even worse though, it becomes part of the fabric. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you're suddenly outraged, I would imagine. I mean,
They might not even have noticed it.
well, that's because it's just become part of the furniture.
Right.
That whole marginalization thing has
Right.
just become part of what is.
Well, so seeing that, and Henry and I had talked about this topic before because we do want to do political topics as well. So we were kind of wanting to discuss the white supremacy, but of course we want to keep it fun. And loose.
Right.
So we both sons of the South. I would consider myself to be liberal in leaning.
Sure.
I would consider you to be that as well.
Yeah.
I kind of even feel this is another thing that I kind of don't like about liberals. I don't even feel like we're qualified to talk about this because we don't have a black person, an American Indian, and
In the room with
a
us.
Jewish person in the room,
Right.
so we can't discuss topics. But yeah, you're going to get the opinion of two white guys from the South about white supremacy. So we're going to do our best. But
Buckle in.
yeah, it's not going to be the most multicultural.
Like, how many times have you heard this?
Right.
Like, didn't Trey Crowder do this already one time?
Is Trey Crowder the redneck guy that does
Yeah.
the things that everyone loves because, he's a redneck, but he's like super liberal?
Right.
Do you think he's real?
When I first heard it, I thought that it was just it was a character, right? To me, obviously, and it sounded a little overmuch. But then I've heard the guy actually talk, and I think he really speaks that way.
Because I saw a thing the other day where that guy, the guy that wears cutoff shirts and trucker caps, and the comedian,
the cable dude.
Yeah,
Larry the Cable Guy.
So he did an interview where he doesn't talk like that.
He doesn't?
No, that's a character. He's not even from the South. But he attributed it to that he really is like that. It's just he is one of those people, like if he goes to the Midwest, he starts talking like a Midwesterner.
Sure.
And if he's around Southern people, he talks like that, and then he just affected that voice.
But that's a common thing. Like in my day job, I work in like a call center environment. It's very common to try to empathize with the person that you're talking to. So you'll find if I were to put you on the phone, you were to talk to somebody from up north,
right.
You'd stop dropping your G's. You'd start talking like this. But if you were to talk to someone from here in the South with an accent, you'd start sort of subtly matching their thing.
What if the sum total of our white supremacy topic episode
is about that?
We broke down Larry the Cable Guy's accent.
Yeah. So, but I got to tell you, grappling with some of the nuts and bolts of this, I got this article that you sent me this week.
Well, let's tell everybody, because we probably need to post a link to that as well.
And I'll post it, man. But I mean, get ready. Put your learning hat on.
Well, I will say this: about a third of the way down, it's an article that was from the Atlantic.
It's called "The First White President,"
and it's I can't remember the author's name. I think his last name is Coates.
Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Okay. About a third of the way down through the article, there is an actual SoundCloud audio recording of somebody reading it. It took them 50 minutes to read it, so
50. Yeah, I listened to
long.
The last 10 minutes in your driveway.
Yeah, it's a long article, but I think it had a lot of good stuff in there. I did feel, I don't know, I wanted to try to keep. So we were going to talk about that article, and then I think we talked about another person that had done something on this topic. And did you pull that as well? I think it was a YouTube clip.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell talking about moral licensing.
Yep.
So I thought maybe we would just kind of keep to those two kind of things, and then if we wanted to, we can always come back to it in different episodes. I didn't want to get so broad that we couldn't really discuss it. But I thought one kind of went into the other pretty good.
Yeah, and there was a lot of sort of academic discussion about how do I explain this? Basically, the existence of slavery served to elevate white working class people to some sort of artificial higher states. At least that's what I got out of it. And do you follow what I'm saying? Maybe you can articulate this better than me.
That it didn't, in really simple terms, it was, well, at least we're not those people.
Right.
Like, the white working class, well, I think the way he put it was back in slavery times, there were white servants, but it was they wanted to be known, and it was culturally, they were servants, and then the others were the help. And they were doing black people a favor because they were giving them housing, and they were giving them...
Right, there was some of that in there,
because they're not really human enough to be treated like white workers who work for you but get a wage.
But basically the article sort of showed or illustrated what I think, and I mean it's dense, I have to listen to it 3 times probably, the path that modern white liberalism has taken.
Yeah, I found it fascinating because it kind of calls out liberals by saying, all this talk about the white working class, that's racist.
Right.
Because the white working class is started with a hand up.
And that's always been what is. When black folks get the shaft, that's just the normal way of living life. When white folks get the shaft, oh my God, we better do something.
Yeah, I thought a really good example that he put out, a real world example, was when the crack epidemic hit in the 80s, we criminalized. That's the way we handled it. We went with 3 strikes and you're out, and we launched a war on drugs. Now that we have a opioid addiction that is mostly affecting the white lower classes, we're treating it as a disease, and we're talking about how can we, which he's not arguing is the wrong way to treat it. He's just arguing that's the difference in the black working class and the white working class. When the white working class has a problem, it's a problem. When the black working class has a problem, we criminalize.
And to talk about the white working class problems is in and of itself the framework of racism, right?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where the article went, was that and it's a go-to spot for. He really kind of picked on Bernie Sanders too, but it's an easy spot to go to because it sounds like you're defending the entire working class, whereas he was saying there's completely two different levels of working class because of racism. Megan sent me another article that kind of dovetailed on this as well. It came out this week that there were polls given about the disparity in income levels between not just between white and blacks, but between whites now and blacks now and white and blacks 30 years ago. And most of us, including the poor, including blacks, said, "Oh, that gap is getting smaller. It's not perfect. Things aren't great, but the gap's closing." And the group that thought the gap was closing the most were rich whites. They were saying, "Oh, those disparities are going away." The fact of the matter is those disparities haven't changed at all.
Really?
They're exactly the same. And it's appalling. I didn't know, so the average white family. Let me look this article up just to make sure I got the statistics right, because I don't want to quote a statistic wrong. The average black household made 60% of what white households made in 2016, and less than half of what Asians made, according to the census data. For every $100 of wealth accumulated by a white family, a black family has little more than $5, a gap just as wide as it was 50 years ago, according to the federal statistics cited by the Yale researchers.
White people have kept their money.
Well, yeah, you can. Yeah, I don't even know what we can talk about the reasoning, but here was the thing I was thinking about when I saw that was, I think there's a reason why the polls now everybody thinks that gap is closing. I think it's pizza commercials.
Really?
So think about I mean, you're a Green Bay Packer fan.
Yep, Green Bay. My wife's Green Bay, so I'm Green Bay.
Jesus Christ, we'll have to do an episode on that. But
I like 'em.
the commercials. You probably don't even watch commercials in between timeouts and stuff like that.
Not unless it's on TV.
Well, a guy like me who watches it on regular TV, so the commercials are usually beer commercials or pizza commercials, and they always are at somebody's house.
Right.
And there's like a cross reference of just dudes.
White guy, black guy,
white guy,
Asian guy, or
white,
whatever.
and another white guy. There's always two white guys,
Uh-huh.
a black guy, maybe an Asian guy, and then there's a bunch of women. Multiracial women,
Mm-hmm.
not multiracial, but just different raced women,
Right.
walking around. They're not all multiracial. That would be awesome. But
one multi.
right, so,
Everybody has all these races.
right. But then somebody's ordered a pizza or something, and the doorbell rings, and they're like, "Hey," or the beer comes or whatever. But in action, so we all kind of feel like that black guy represents black guys are doing just as good as we are now. They're every
Right. That's what's reflected back, right?
That's what I yeah. And not that there aren't black people that are doing that great. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying my reaction listening to those numbers were 50 years ago, you wouldn't have thought the black guy could afford to sit there with you because he probably couldn't pay for the pizza. You'd have to buy the pizza.
He's not at the party?
He's not at the party, right? Because he can't even live in the neighborhood. You'd have to go pick him up at another neighborhood. It doesn't look like it's any different now. And I think we're being desensitized to that by advertising and media. And not that they're doing it I'm not saying they're
Like a mean-spirited way.
No,
they're trying to appeal to a broad,
right,
or the best of what we want to be.
Which in one way is kind of good because it's saying you should have black people at your party. You should have multicultural parties.
This is the way you want to see yourself.
This is the way it should be, right? But I think we started thinking we ingest it as this is the way it is,
right.
And it's not.
And I would challenge us to say, are we really that way, or is it something we want to be? This goes back to the moral licensing part.
So it makes us feel good.
Yeah, it makes you feel good to think that you're that way.
So even though I've never had a black person over to my house to watch NFL football, because I see it on the pizza commercial, I'm like, oh yeah, that's happening.
That satisfies that need.
That's happening out there. So the Malcolm Gladwell, I feel like the Malcolm Gladwell YouTube clip was a much simpler version, which basically said moral licensing, which if you don't know what moral licensing is, I wrote the definition down. A conscious or subconscious relaxing of moral principles in one's behavior immediately following completion of an act that adheres to that.
Right. I can't be racist because I've got a black friend.
If I strictly stick to my diet all week and I'm really good about it, then on Saturday I let myself eat 3 terrible burgers and drink all the beer I want because I was good. So now you can't call me.
Right. People write checks on that. Like, I was at the gym
Right.
today, so I'm allowed to eat 2 hamburgers.
Right.
he
And
said.
so the way he was putting that was, we all are patting ourselves on the back so much that we've had a black president now. As a culture, now we can openly have the anti-black president because no one can call you a racist. We just had a black.
We just had a black president.
Right. What do you want? Mr. Coates, in his article, took it a bit further. He said, what we've done is we've admitted, or we have elected, the first, what he calls the first white president, which he says, and I quote, if a black man can be president, then any white man, no matter how fallen, can be president. And that was from the article. Barack had to work twice as hard as a white person to become president.
Could you imagine?
Trump proves that you can take the worst white person and make him president.
Could you imagine a black guy talking about grabbing somebody's pussy?
Well, I think that's what was interesting to me about the article.
Right.
He was basically saying Trump is actually, we held him up subconsciously as, okay, you had your black president. Now we're gonna elect the worst white person to prove to you that any white person can be president. It's kind of scary.
Right, and the left is trying to make this about ignoring the problems of white working class folks. But Mr. Coates here would say that that's all bullshit. It's really just about the whole framework of being white.
Well, I saw this again. I can't back it up with data, but if you look online, it's not fake news. You can go look this up. It turns out if you take people of color out of the exit polls completely for this past election, it wasn't just the working class whites. Working class whites voted about the same amount democratically as they did in prior elections. It was just white people in general voted 60% for Donald Trump. That's who put him in the White House. Now, I think a good argument can be made that black people didn't turn out the way they turned out for Barack Obama.
Because of what they would say, they would call it identity politics.
But Mr. Coates would say identity politics put Barack Obama in the White House, a Democrat. So this going away from identity politics, which is what the liberal battle cry is now, is total BS. We should stick with identity politics because it got us the last president elected. And he even argues that if you don't think Trump came about because of identity politics, he came about because of white identity politics.
He made his whole career on this.
Yeah.
The guy built it on questioning Barack Obama's birtherism. Remember, questioning his birth certificate made the guy produce one.
There's actually a quote in there from when he was back in the 70s that said he didn't want a black person counting his money. I don't know if you remember that from the article, but he said something about he didn't want black hands on his money. He wanted
short Jews, or he wanted
guys
Jews
wearing
with yarmulkes.
Yeah, counting his money.
Yarmulkes?
Yarmulkes? Yarmulkes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think there is a proven track record of racism with Trump. I don't think we even have to argue that.
And some people would say that's too easy, but it is exactly that.
Well, that's why what I thought was interesting with these two articles, and the thing I wanted to talk about was more the liberal side, because I don't think we're going to have a lot of conservatives listen to our podcast.
Probably not. They'll turn us off.
Yeah, I mean, but I hear this a lot too, that the Democratic Party is like, people are becoming too liberal, that we'll never be able to elect anybody again because we're going too far.
We're not liberal enough.
That's the way I feel. That's the way I feel, and that was the feeling I was getting from the Coates article. Was he was pretty harsh on Bill Clinton too. I mean, I don't know. I think the identity politics. I think the other factor that we're not really thinking about as a nation is this nation becomes more and more a nation of color, and the more we do, the more the identity politics of people not white is going to be important. So whether you like it or not.
Is there a solution to this?
I don't know. I was kind of really bummed out after reading his article.
Because I didn't catch one.
Well, it kind of reminded me, you had this big fascination, you probably still do, with the philosopher guy that you love.
Chomsky.
Chomsky. So,
Yeah.
and you kind of got me into reading some Noam Chomsky, and the guy never offers a solution.
Right.
The guy
It's
just
like doom and gloom.
the guy just points out book after book after book how everything sucks.
Right. This guy was,
Right.
and Mr. Coates is kind of like this, right?
Well, I don't know. I felt like I felt like he was alienating me from I felt like he was going. Even if you try to be on my side, you're still white. You can't be. That was kind of the sad thing I took away. Like, you're a white liberal and you're wrong. Like, good try, but you're still not getting it.
Well,
I almost felt like it was kind of scary because it was like so far like, okay, so now what can I do? You've made some good points about how, white working class and black working class, you can't equate those because one came out of indentured servitude and the other came out of slavery. Not indenturement. They came out of you are owned for life as property.
right.
Not you owe a debt and you have to pay us back and then you can be a regular human like the rest of us. That's not an equal playing field when you start there.
The game's never been set up for, in my class this week, I was reading a lot of black authors from the 1900s who were, and I think the first one was Booker T. Washington, who is, in a lot of circles, has been called an appeaser. Basically, he said after slaves were emancipated to go on and work alongside your white compatriots, prove your value, don't work hard for the vote, don't try to be artists or writers or anything like that, be useful to the economy. He was the guy that started Tuskegee Institute. And then later on, W.E.B. Du Bois
I always thought it was Du Bois.
took some issue with that. And then even farther along, you begin to see that African Americans took on a much more nuanced understanding of their place in society, but it had become ingrained in who they are. The idea of being always on the back foot was part of a cultural expectation.
Right.
And sort of for me, what it feels like is this feedback loop, where it becomes part of your identity, and you use that to prop yourself up emotionally.
Well, and I looked at and when I read Du Bois in college, I kind of looked at it like in a simplified version was don't look for the white man to solve your problems.
Right.
He enslaved you. Go forget protesting to try to get more from the white man.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build our own colleges. Stay on your farm. Be the best farmer you can be.
Right.
Let's grow our own stuff. Let's show that we can create value. And I think even before Bill Cosby became the devil, Bill Cosby was one that articulated this, which a lot of black people hated, which was, if you're expecting white America to solve your problems, it ain't never going to happen. We have to solve our own problems. Those early guys were just saying, look, we got our freedom, and let's work on bettering ourselves and not worry about getting more stuff from. And I think by Martin Luther King, that was a whole different. I don't think that argument held. I don't think Du Bois held.
No.
I think by the time we got to Martin Luther King, he was like, there's systematic barriers that are holding us back that we've got to get through.
I almost it's weird to try to observe this from the outside, being a white male. I got to tell you.
Well, I'll tell you something else, and we'll move on. I know this is very academic, and there was another way I wanted to approach it real quick too, but I did want to say this. I wish that's part of the problem. We can't even talk about it in this country.
Right.
Like, I feel weird even expressing it, and especially expressing an opinion that we're going to put out
to the world.
Right. Like, we can't even have opinions about stuff, or not stuff, about racism, or we can't even get to the table to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, because it feels awkward.
Right.
You shift in your seat, and I don't have an easy solution for this.
Well, not even a solution. I don't even want to say I describe it in the wrong way. If I make a misstep in the way I describe it, I'm either going to be called racist, or worse, I might have a black person out there call in and just say, man, you don't know what you're talking about.
And look, I welcome that. Wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, but I mean I think don't you feel like that's the dilemma we're in? We can't even really have a conversation about it comfortably.
Right.
But the part that we can have a conversation about comfortably, and this was the other issue I wanted to bring up before we move on.
And by the way,
was-
fuck that flag you saw. Okay. Can I just say that?
I want you to go with me to see it. I think we should field trip up there. You can't really, and when I use the word majesty, please know I'm using it
It's so
in
majestically
in a
racist.
mocking way. You have to see it in all its majesty to believe it. I actually had to pull the car over. I couldn't believe it. It was like the biggest. I've seen like I don't know. There used to be a big American flag going down Independence Boulevard on the way to the beach back in the 90s.
Right. I remember that.
At this car dealership. I think it was in Monroe.
It's as big as that.
It's as big as that. It is like this is custom job. It had to cost thousands of bucks to buy this. Who feels that strongly? And here's the other thing. And this is something that me and you can talk to because we're white Southern guys.
Okay.
All this heritage versus hate stuff. That guy that put that up felt a lot of hate. He may not admit to it. He may talk the heritage BS, but he definitely put that up to show black
What
people.
other reason would you, except to support an old Southern framework in the world? That's all you want to do is propagate that same slave-holding mentality. Let's not forget who runs the show here.
Well,
Let's
the
not forget-
other part of this I wanted to talk about, which I think is interesting, is how somehow it's not considered anti-patriotic by the right to have Confederate flags up. Let's take the slavery part out of it. Those are flags of a rebel nation, a rebellion against the United States of America.
I would say
How is that patriotic?
First of all, I don't agree that with anything they're doing. But here's what they would say. Like I'm trying to imagine an intellectual argument for this. We are a special case. The United States is a special case. This is what they would say. The U.S. is a special case in that we have chosen to embrace and celebrate rebellion.
That's not true. We're a special case because we want to celebrate racism. It's hatred. Because the only thing that really differentiated the South was slavery. That's it. When you say you hold to the old Southern ideals, the genteel South,
The mint julep and the
none of that was possible without people who were your property doing all the work. That's the only way it was possible. So the heritage thing just doesn't play with me. And I'm a Southerner, so I think I can say that, right?
Yep.
And it seems like there's other ways. Here's the other part of that. So even if I was a heritage guy, and let's say I believed that to the core and I didn't hate black people, and somehow I still thought that was a valid argument, just by virtue of the fact that I know my Southern black friends, who are just as Southern as I am, are offended by it, are terrified of it, I'm not going to put it up. I'll find another way to celebrate the heritage of the South.
No, you insist on your rights.
Hey, here's a good way to celebrate the heritage of the South. The blues were invented in the South.
They don't care
Jazz
about
was
that.
invented in the
It's
South.
all just a bunch of horse shit they threw together to justify it.
But there's so many cool things that came from the South that we can celebrate the heritage of without putting up a flag that basically says, black people aren't welcome here.
They might as
Well, they know that even if they're a heritage guy, they know that that's what it means because black people, wouldn't you feel?
But obviously not everybody felt that. Remember when Tom Petty did that? Remember when Tom Petty put up the Confederate flag behind him?
No, I don't.
On the and he expressed later on that he regretted the hell out of that. But the backdrop of the show, he was playing that song "Rebel." I was born a rebel down in Dixie on a Sunday morning, with one foot in the grave and one foot on the pedal.
Yeah, see,
And you know what one could question him about what he was talking about there, but he didn't realize. He said he was ignorant at the time.
Well, of
what it meant.
I kind of get that. It doesn't
And
excuse it. I think that's what I was talking about when I was younger. Like, I didn't know any black people.
Right.
I lived up in the sticks of Tennessee, so I didn't encounter black people. So if I saw rebel flags, I didn't first think hate in my mind because there weren't any black people around, so I just was like, oh, it's Southern, we're Southern.
Yeah, I didn't put it together either.
You know, and then when I was like, you kind of take it as you're starting to come out and grow and learn and become a person. You're like, your first inkling is, why do they want to take that away from us? I'm not hurting anybody with that. I don't want to hurt anybody. But then you realize it's nothing but a symbol of hate. That's all it is.
I'm going to put this article up on our podcast feed, and I really encourage anybody to take the time to at least put it on in their car and play it for a few minutes at a time. Maybe if you're feeling a little.
You should play our whole podcast first.
Right, play that first, obviously. But it's really worth a read. It might even be better to read it on your own, in your own voice, in your own head, instead of the recorded thing. I found it a little more difficult to follow when I couldn't back up in my mind and try to process it.
I had to read it because he is so smart and academic. There were times where I was like, if I was just listening to this, I would be like,
this would make total sense. And like every third sentence, I could start to grasp, right? But the way that he connected the dots, which automatically makes me worry, because I think there's something that, you know what I mean? Like, I worry, is there some special sauce I'm not understanding here?
Yeah.
Obviously, he's talking over my head.
Right, and I hope that he comes back and writes another article and says this is the way forward, or somebody does, because it was pretty scathing. And you and me know this. This is something else I wanted to bring up at this podcast before we go to current events.
I got so much more to say on this.
I know. Maybe we need to do another pod on it. Though
on
I
white
feel
supremacy.
Like we might actually
on Southern racism. Say it.
Well, it bothered me that people are shocked. I think on a national level, people are shocked at the level of racism that's out there. Charlottesville was not just like 12 KKK guys marching around in white hoods. There are lots, and me and you, I think, both know this. There are lots of white people that are just under the surface. They're dying to come out and say it. And and it feels like the flood, that's where the moral licensing part came into me. It's like the floodgates are now open. It's okay, man. It's okay to say it. Because look at the guy in the White House.
Yeah. We elected him.
You know? So
it's not normal. It's fucked up. And
well, we'd like to hear your comments too. So you guys,
yeah, even if you're a Trump person,
let us know what you think. And I'm sure I said something wrong in this episode, and I'm gonna get branded a racist. But
I hope not. Sometimes I have ideas that I want to impart that come across imperfectly, but I'm hoping you folks can tell that.
Current events.
All right, current events. We don't have long for this segment, unless I have to edit out half of the white supremacy conversation.
Holy cannoli.
Wow.
We bit that off, dude.
We did. We went right in there and just went for it. And so, yeah, current events. We're going to talk about Morrissey for the current event. And again, this is a 2-strike and you're out policy, so there will be no Morrissey talk on the next week. But Herr Morrissey put out a new tune this week, right after Henry brought up last week that he was going to put out a new album.
Want to play it first?
Should we play it?
Sure.
All right,
I'm sure you'd love it.
What's the name of the song?
Oh, Chris.
Spent the Day in Bed.
Right.
And it's by Morrissey, and it's off of his new record, which is going to be called
Low in High School.
Here it is.
Spent the day in bed, very happy I did. Yes, I spent the day in bed. As the workers stay enslaved, I spent the day in bed. I'm not my type, but I love my bed. And I recommend that you stop watching the news. because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel small and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own. I spent the day in bed. It's a consolation when all my dreams are perfectly legal in sheets for which I paid. I am now laid, and I recommend to all of my friends that they stop watching the news, because the news contrives to frighten you, to make you feel small and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own. Oh, time, do as I wish. Time, do as I wish. Oh, time, do as I wish. Time, do as I wish. Oh, time, do as I wish. Time, do as I wish. Oh, time, do as I wish. Do as I wish. I spent the day in bed. You can please yourself, but I spent the day in bed. Pillows are like pillars, life ends in death. So there's nothing wrong with being good to yourself. Be good to yourself for once, and no bus, no rain, no train, no bus, no boss, no rain, no train, no bus, no boss, no rain, no train, no emasculation, no castration, no highway, freeway, motorway, no bus, no rain, no train, no bus, no rain, no train, no bus.
Okay, so I've got all kinds of thoughts on this.
You have a lot of feedback about it?
I
I
kinda
really
do.
liked it. I really liked it. I know that our big gripe with Morrissey last week was him not pushing the boundary at all. In this song, he still is Morrissey, right?
I was super jacked because it was almost like we directed him. We called him out. We said you're gonna put out another guitar wankery Morrissey record, and all of a sudden there's this twinkly, keyboardy kind
Here's
of.
the keyboard.
Wow.
Fuck you guys.
So I'll say this about it. I want to approach it in two different ways, Henry, and I want to get your take. And I know my wife's going to say I'm talking too much, but this is just the way it is.
Okay.
So, first way. Good on you, Morrissey, for trying to grow. I'm not 100% sure it's cutting edge keyboardy stuff, but you're not at the level of Bjork yet. But good on you.
He ain't
Good,
trying.
good effort. It still sounds like Morrissey too, which I think is kind of cool that it's growing, but sounds like Morrissey. I liked it. I didn't love it. I liked it, but it was more than I was expecting from. I was expecting actually not to like it, so that was kind of good. So from a musical standpoint, I'm gonna give it a thumbs up.
Yep, I will too. But I will also say this: Morrissey was, I don't know. I feel like the lyrics are like show him sort of backing away. I'm going to stay in bed. Don't look at the news. Don't get engaged anymore. Fuck it. I give up. And I think that's very very apt for how you feel and how I feel. I know I've disengaged a lot from the Facebook is a nonstop anxiety machine if you're not careful.
I'm going to take a different tack than you did on it, because the other way I wanted to say that it affected me or I reacted to it was lyrically. Mm-hmm. This was on first blush. Mm-hmm. I took it in a very neo-Nazi right-wing way.
How so?
Don't watch the news. It's fake.
Oh, it's fake.
Well, who is the biggest guy telling you not to watch the news right now?
Yeah, but he just says that the news is designed to elicit feelings in you.
Stop watching the news because the news contrived to frighten
you,
to make you feel small and alone, to make you feel that your mind isn't your own. That sounds like a battle cry to white supremacists to me. That's exactly what Trump is putting out there.
I never would have picked up on that.
Then here's the other thing that kind of bothered me. He also said, as the workers stay enslaved, which maybe my mind, because of these articles we've been reading, to me, he was talking to the white working class. As my mind stays enslaved, stop watching the news. Morrissey's got a pretty bad track record with white nationalism. So my first take on it was this is a pretty right-wing call to arm. Anyway, and maybe I'm wrong. I kind of like the song. I hope the way you interpreted it was
you fucking ruined it for me now.
Was correct.
Now I got to go back and listen to it, and I'm going to listen to why Morrissey's a right wing.
He didn't say stop watching Fox News. He said stop watching the news, and I take the news to be CNN.
I would think it just because it's anxiety provoking. That's all. I'm going to stay in bed. To hell with it.
Do you think CNN would say they contrived to frighten you?
No, they wouldn't say that.
Well, they do. You know
why?
But
they do. Right. But also, have you looked at your Facebook feed lately? All the headlines are incendiary.
That's not the news. See, that's what scares me. The attack right now is on the media, is on the news, is on mainstream news.
Yeah.
It's not on Facebook. Facebook is what won this guy the election. It's
They're the incendiary part.
He's
not
not telling you to stay away from Facebook. The Russians hacked Facebook and screwed us all. Right. Morrissey's telling you to stay away from the mainstream news, is what I took from it, which is exactly what Trump is saying every single day.
Interesting.
More to come. That's current events. Anything else you want to talk about this episode?
I think that's it. I want to thank everybody for giving us a listen. I know this was pretty challenging this time. Stick with us. It ain't going to always be this heavy.
Yeah, next week I think we're going to do movies, Henry. So I think we're going to attack a couple of our favorite movies.
Yep, I have a paper to write, but I'm going to get into this horror movie assignment.
Yep.
And I'll report back on that.
And then also, we're looking to you guys out there to get in contact with our 3, hopefully, mystery guests. And we will do an episode devoted to interviewing those people.
That's right.
Or one of them. If you guys can get them lined up.
NoGDBand@gmail.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thanks so much, everybody.
Hopefully we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
We don't need no fancy words. I mean, we need to practice. We need to rehearse.
I'll tell you what we need. We need some paying gigs. We don't need just messing around, first one patio and then another, and that's ridiculous.